Hello, Laguna Creek High School. This is Kaja. He's my TA, and he's going to be demonstrating the clockwork form for the different sword fight positions for Theater 2, so that you can learn the basic positions for sword fighting for our Theater 2 class. So, all of the different positions work kind of on a clock. So just like reading a clock, you would base it off of 12, 1, 2, 3, so on, but only when based on the attacker's position. When you are in the defensive position, it's going to be reversed because you are defending from the opposite side. From the attacker's position, though, it will always be from 12, 1, 2, 3, etc. So, he is going to go ahead and demonstrate the basics right now. So first of all, let's just go ahead and demonstrate the proper grip on a dowel sword. So our dowel swords are used to imitate real swords for practice. They are just dowel rods that are about the proper length of a sword. They have tape wrapped around the handle to show where your handle is going to be to practice not grabbing the blade portion of your sword. You are going to practice wrapping your fingers around that handle portion, keeping that pointer finger extended and pointed upwards towards your sword to help guide it, and letting your pinky kind of be free-forming down there and your thumb kind of wrap around the other side of your sword. It is really important that you keep this grip on your sword the entire time, because once you have a steel sword in hand, it's going to be a lot harder to hold on to it with any other grip other than that one. And it's just really important that you be practicing with that grip the whole time. Don't be alarmed if after a little bit of practicing these different positions, your wrist starts to hurt. These are not really natural positions for the human body. We don't do sword fighting anymore, typically with the human body. So your wrist is naturally going to be tired as you redevelop these muscles that we don't usually use anymore. So the proper unguard starting position. You are going to take your dominant foot. If you're right-handed, this is going to be your right foot. If you're left-handed, it's going to be your left arm and your left foot. It is going to point straight in front of you and be extended in front of you. Your opposite foot, your non-dominant foot, is going to be pointed at a 45-degree angle out to the side, and your heel should more or less be just a little bit off from in line with your other foot, and it should be about 8 inches behind your other foot. From there, your knee should be bent. Your hips should be straight underneath you. Your free arm should be out to the side, ready to go. And your arm should be extended in front of you, wrist down, finger pushing that pointer finger forward so your sword is pointed with the tip of your sword pointed towards the eyes of your opponent. That is the proper unguard position. I'm going to have Kaja turn to the side so you can see what it looks like from the side. And go ahead and go from the other side, Kaja. Good. Okay. All right. Now, moving on to the proper clockwork positions for attackers. So, starting in our unguard position, we are going to start at the top of the clock, which is our 12 o'clock strike. Our 12 o'clock strike is going to be exactly where you think it's going to be, which is up and aiming for the top of the person's head for the person you are attacking. So you are aiming to hit the crown of their forehead. So you are aiming just right there at the top of their head. Typically you add what is called a flourish, which is, Kaja's going to demonstrate real quick. It just comes around in a circle, up and over. It does nothing for the actual move. It just looks cool. And so we add it into stage fighting just to make the move look neat. It's typically added to a 12 o'clock because you've got plenty of time to kind of get your sword up there. The trick to a flourish is to actually loosen your grip on the sword, so you're letting your wrist kind of go limp a little bit and only be kind of holding the sword from the loosest of your fingers, those kind of 3 thumb and middle and pointer fingers, and then let it twirl around and then re-grab it towards the top of the point of the sword when you are about to make contact with your opponent. From there, your arm should be fully extended, elbow locked, sword straight. That is a 12 o'clock. From there, your opponent is actually going to bend and throw you off of them. So you are going to allow yourself to be thrown back in a 12 o'clock move. We will talk about that later with defense, however. So that is a 12 o'clock. Moving on to 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock is going to be a slash at a diagonal. So you are slashing at the diagonal, coming off the side, 1 o'clock. Yeah, there we go. So the 1 o'clock is coming off the side, going towards that 1 o'clock on a clock. So if your opponent's sword is going to be angled, so you are going to be sliding off of their sword. Again, it's most likely you're going to add a flourish here, but the goal is that your sword is going to slide off of theirs. It's essentially a 12 o'clock, but you are making contact with a sword at a diagonal and allowing it to slide down and off of their sword. So that is a 1 o'clock. A 2 o'clock technically does not exist. If it existed, it'd be us aiming for our opponent's eyes. We do not do this in stage theater because eyes are a very easy thing to damage. It's a very easy accident to happen on stage, and it's a very permanent accident to happen. So the actual move of a 2 and I believe it's a 10, yes? A 2 and a 10 don't technically exist. We're going to go ahead and skip over those moves. So a 2 and a 10, if they existed, would be the left and right eyes, but we will be skipping them. And we will be moving right along. So we have the 12, 1, 2, and moving on to 3. 3 is going to be the shoulder stab. You are aiming straight in front of you. So his arm should drop a little bit and be straight in line with his own shoulder. His sword should be straight in front of him, in line with his body, extended arm, straight elbow. And when he does this, it's a thrust move. So I'm going to have him pull back his elbow and demonstrate that one more time. So he pulls back towards his shoulder. This is for 2 reasons. It's to add power, but it's also to warn his opponent, because this is stage combat, that the move is coming, so that their opponent is ready to block, because a 3 move is really close to their body. So this is allowing them time to make sure that they are ready to block it. So then 3 thrust pushes forward, and it is aiming right for their opponent's shoulder. A 4 is a full body slice. So a 4 is going to be coming around. Sometimes it comes fully around the body, like Kaja is demonstrating. Sometimes it just comes straight from the side, but you are extending your sword out to the side and slicing your opponent from the side. You're aiming for the side of their sword, the middle of their sword usually, when they are blocking you. But if they were not blocking you, from the audience's perspective, you are aiming to sort of slice them in their shoulder or mid-torso area, depending on their height. This is a 4. A 5 o'clock is going to be aiming for their ankles. So specifically their left ankle, the ankle that is directly across from your right foot, if you are right-footed. If you are left-footed, it's going to be at the diagonal across from your left foot. So you are swinging your sword down at the diagonal to make contact with that ankle. The alternative for this move is to pull back and make it a stabbing move. You can do that as well. It is a lesser used move for 5, but you can do that. Typically, we use the slice, however, for 5. So 5 is that slicing move typically coming in at 5. 6 is going to be that stab move, but it's going to be straight center on your opponent. This is a very rarely used move typically in real sword fighting because it's not a very effective move. It's used in stage combat to usually help an opponent lose, and that is demonstrated later about why, but essentially you are going for a slice from the groin upwards for this sort of move, or for a toe stab. So this is directly center mass for them between their toes. So right between their toes is where you're aiming straight down. That is 6. On 7, you are essentially doing the opposite of everything you just did. You are coming around the other side to do a slice at the other ankle. You can also do a stab at the other ankle. Go ahead and demonstrate the stab. That is 7. 8 is going to be a double-handed move, and it is going to be making contact, again, with that lower just a bit, Kaja, there you go, with the torso. So typically 4 and 8 are often linked. I'm going to have Kaja demonstrate that. So typically what you often see in sword fight choreographed plays is someone choreographing a 4 move followed by an 8, which looks like that. So that is often why 8s have that double-handed grip. So you can do an 8 without a double-handed grip, but because it's on the opposite side of your body, it does not feel comfortable. So I highly advise using that double-handed grip whenever doing that 8. If you are left-handed, a lot of these moves are going to be reversed for you. So when you do an 8 and a 4, the 4 might be the one that you have the double grip on. When you do an 11 and a 1, the 11 might be the one that you have the double grip on versus the 1, etc. All right, so that is the 8. The 9 o'clock is going to be the shoulder stab on the opposite side. You're going across your body to hit their other shoulder. Again, we don't do the 10 o'clock. That would be their eyes if we did demonstrate that, which we're not going to. The 11 o'clock is going to be that strike, that diagonal strike on their other side coming from that 11 o'clock, going to 11. Yeah, going to 11, there we go. And then we are back at 12 o'clock. So that is the full attacker's genre of moves for the clock. There is footwork that goes with some of these things. So we will demonstrate that now before we get into the defensive moves. So there is not a ton of footwork we cover in this class, but there is a few moves. So those moves are as follows. We have basic en garde, which is the position we demonstrated earlier that Kaja is currently in. We have the advance. Advance is where the person takes their lead foot, whichever that is. They're going to step forward with their heel first. This is very important, though. They step with their heel, and then they let their other foot come forward, dragging by their toe behind them to close their feet together. And then they step forward onto their toe, coming back into that en garde position in front again. So that is what is called an advance. A retreat is the exact opposite. They're going to step backwards onto their toe, letting their front foot come backwards to meet them and taking a step back again out with that back foot back into en garde. So that is a advance and a retreat. There is also a pass-through, which is the footwork is different for an attacker versus a defender. For the attacker, the footwork is going to be in advance, followed by taking a step forward, with your other foot, and then reversing to your back to taking a step backwards, and then doing a little hop, skip, and a step backwards. So take another hop backwards there. There you go. Yeah. And making sure that you're back in that en garde position. All right. So take a few steps forward and demonstrate that whole pass-through move. And turn into the back. Okay. And then go ahead and do the other part of the footwork for a pass-through, which is just opening the door. So if you are the defender, you are going to open the door for the person to pass through, and then as they pass through, they've just passed through, you are going to close the door and take a step back on that foot back to en garde. All right. Cool. So going on, we are going to do our defensive positions. Now, please remember, everything is reversed. So even though Kaja is still right-handed and we are still using the clock to call out all of the same positions. So this is still 12, still 1, still 2. Our attacker is still doing the same things. Our defensive ones will sometimes look at the exact opposite of what we just did. And that is because when you're facing your opponent, even if you are doing the same thing, if we were all facing the same direction, we would be doing the same thing. But because we are facing each other, the directions are reversed. So it's important to remember that. So, defensive. Here we go. 12 defense. is going to be perfectly parallel with the floor. Lower that point of that tip. Perfect. Okay. So that is going to be straight across, parallel to the floor. We want to make sure that it is thrust enough that it is forward in front of your body, that it is above your head, and that, but it is not so, bend your arm just a hair, please. Yeah, so you want to make sure that it is covering your head so that that sword is not going to make contact with the top of your head. You do want a little bit of distance between the sword and your head, because when that force hits that sword, you are going to bend your knees, let that sword come in a little bit to add tension, and then you are going to push with your knees and thrust it up, extending that arm and pushing the sword away from your body. So that is a 12 o'clock defense right there. Your 11 o'clock defense. So if I am coming in, so as a video defense, I'm just going to show you what a 12 o'clock making contact is going to look like. So 12 o'clock makes contact here, he bends, and he throws. Good. So 11 o'clock, he is going to, when I am doing, a 1 o'clock. When I am going for a 1 o'clock strike, I am going for a strike this way. 1 o'clock strike this way. And he is going to form a kind of a picture box there with his hands. So what's really important is that for this position, go ahead and put your sword straight in front of your face. Grasp it with 2 hands. Tilt your whole sword to the side so it's parallel with the floor. Raise it up so it's above your headline. Make sure that you form a little picture box with your face, and then tilt the edge of your sword so it's down towards the floor. That is proper 1 o'clock defense. It is really important. It is an awkward position to hold, but it's really important that you get this positioning right for the 1 o'clock defense. A proper 1 o'clock defense will then jing off just like that. 2 o'clock, again, doesn't exist. If it did, it would block your eye, but we're not going to practice that. 3 o'clock it's really important that your shoulders remain parallel to the front, because 3 o'clock is going to defend across your body to the shoulder strike that is coming straight on from your opponent. So your opponent is going straight in front of them, but because these are opposite moves, your 3 o'clock is actually across your body. It is important that your 3 o'clock never extends past your shoulder. So when you are learning the defense move, you should practice your 3 and your 9s by putting them so that they are right next to your shoulder. So demonstrate the 3 and the 9 position defensively. And then 9. Yes. So you are essentially knocking their sword just barely past the line of your shoulders. This is supposed to be a quick defense move where they are essentially, you are barely defending yourself against a faster opponent. So you are barely knocking their sword away from your body. It is to add tension to a sword fight. A 3 o'clock move is a stab move. It's coming in towards your shoulder. You are going to knock it away from your body, but we are keeping it close to our shoulder and keeping our shoulders tilted towards our audience, yep, and bringing that arm closer to our shoulder, yep. So essentially, we are just barely making it past our shoulder. Push out just a little bit more. Yeah, right about there is proper 3 o'clock form. The other side, 9 o'clock, would just be the opposite. It'd be me going across my body, but it would not be you going across your body because it is opposites. So similar, even though 1 o'clock was that picture frame, and 11 o'clock is going to be defense, is going to be just your straight on. So 11 o'clock is going to be that way, one-handed. For left-handers, your 11 o'clock may be the one you double hand, while your 1 o'clock might be the one you single hand. It just depends what you are comfortable with. So we have done 3 and 9, 11 and 1. So 4 and 8 defense is very easy. It is essentially a 3 and 9, but you are fully extending your arm out to the side. Go ahead and demonstrate. And you are letting the sword point tilt out. So go back to a 3 and a 9. That sword point needs to stay straight up and down when it's by your shoulder. It is hard to do, and you really need to focus on form when using the dowels, because once you have a metal sword in your hand, it's heavier and it will be much easier to accidentally let that sword point go wherever it wants to. So it's very important to work on keeping that sword straight up and down. For a 4 and an 8, you'll extend that out and let it point outwards. That is because these are much stronger moves. So when it hits, you want to make sure that you have more power to block and extend it. Go ahead and do an 8, other side. Yep, 4 and an 8. A 5 and a 7 are our first moves where we flip our sword downwards to defend. We are going to point at a bug is how I like to describe it. So you're going to point at the bug at the floor like you're point outwards, straight arm, yes. So you are defending just like you did a 4 and an 8 on both sides. Defending your ankles, 4 and 8. 6 is an interesting move because it is an interesting defense. So I am essentially going for a 6 o'clock right here. His goal is to block me. This is proper 6 o'clock position, wrist straight up, sword straight up and down. The goal is to have his sword swing up and in and knock my sword away from his body and just barely miss him coming out, just like that 3 and 9 barely missed. So a 6 is also sort of a barely missed endeavor situation. So this is what that would look like. My sword is coming in, and his sword usually, this is choreographed where his sword is somewhere else, and so he's forced to bring it up and around in order to meet my 6. So it's coming in, he's coming up and around, and he knocks it away. But it's important he gets back to that 6 o'clock position, or he leaves his body open. So wrist up, wrist, the wrist up, yeah, and then stay in that 6 o'clock. And you just use the bottom of the sword to knock me away. Yeah, there you go. And good. Okay, so one more time, 6 o'clock. So your sword's somewhere else. I come in for the stab. Yep, and then just the bottom of the sword, but keep that sword in front of you. Keep it in front of you. Yeah, good, there you go. That's a proper 6. Okay, so there's your 6 o'clock. So, and then again, we already demonstrated, but 7 o'clock is out this way. 8 o'clock is up that way, out to the side. 9 o'clock right there and at your shoulder, straight up and down. 11 o'clock is at the diagonal, and 12 o'clock, perfect. Yes, great job. All right, am I missing any particular moves that you can think of? Oh, the stab, right? And the swoosh.
Oh, the swoosh.
Yes. So when doing a diagonal cut where your opponent dodges, you're always going to cut from high right to low left. And you're going to aim to flick your wrist so that the tip of your sword moves faster than anything else, because you want to hear like a whoosh of air. It's almost like a whip. You're trying to like whip it through the air to make like a whoosh sound so that you hear a slice of air for the impressive sound. You can actually make it with the wooden dowels. Can you make the sound with the wooden dowel, Kasia?
Yeah.
Nice, excellent job. Ideally, you do this because even if your opponent is standing, if they are at the proper distance in front of you, then they will not be injured. Your opponent, however, is going to be dodging down and to the left of you. So they're going to just dodge and to the left. It is very important they take their sword with them when they dodge so that it doesn't get caught up in that move. Good. Other than that, your end move for the final Theater 2 routine does involve someone getting faked stabbed and dying. It is all about perspective, which is important. So we are going to go ahead and demonstrate what that is going to look like. The attacker is going to take their opportunity to stab the other person. They are going to extend their sword, quote unquote, through the other person by aiming to the side of the other person. So whatever side is not facing the audience, so the non-audience side is where they are aiming. They're going to run their sword along the side of their opponent so that the sword extends past their opponent's back. So from the audience perspective, it looks like they have run their opponent through. They are then going to wait for their opponent to grab the sword so that their opponent can make sure that it stays secured into their side so that there's no wobbly swords running around. From there, they're going to wait for their opponent to drop their sword safely out of the way, and then they will twist their wrist upwards and make it look painful, like they have added a killing blow. They will wait for their opponent to let go of the sword so that they do not slice their hand. And once they have done that, they will go ahead and viciously yank their sword out to disguise the fact that it was never in them in the first place, allow their opponent to fall down and die, and then go ahead and give a nice like victory, like, ha, you know, and twirl, etc. I have won. Yes. And that is the attacker's side of the kill ending for the Theater 2 routine. For our defender who dies, we have kind of a fun little acting moment for you here. So you get stabbed. You are going to go ahead and reach upwards, leaving yourself nice and open to get stabbed. You want to make sure your arms are out of the way, and whatever is your non-audience side is the side that they are going to stab you in. So pretend for Kaja for today, it's going to be his left side. So he has now been stabbed in his left side. He is going to grab that sword to make sure he keeps it secured to his side. He's going to immediately, with his other hand, grab the sword, extend it out away from his body, bring it as low as he can before dropping it away from him. This is for two reasons: to prevent damage to the sword by dropping it as low as he can, but also to prevent damage to him so that when he falls over later, he's not literally falling on his sword. From there, his opponent is going to twist the sword upwards, and he is going to react as if he is dying here. He is going to then conveniently let go of that sword, but not let the audience know he has, and then the sword is going to get yanked out, quote unquote, and he is going to react to that, stumbling backwards. Allow his body to fall over, following the method he has learned in the staged combat unit for proper stage falling, and allow himself to die as dramatically as he wants for this end moment. And that is the full kind of death moment for this whole thing. You can see this whole routine in the other video where we have recorded the whole kind of routine for you to be able to watch. But this is kind of all of the individual components of the stage combat sword fighting unit for Theater 2 for Laguna Creek High School. All right.